Hello, welcome everybody. Can you see us? Can you hear us? Okay, great. Thanks for joining us on this Taco Tuesday at 5 p.m. I'm very excited about this chat. Very excited to hand it over to Katy. But first, as chairman of Startup San Diego, I just want to welcome you. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to spending time with us tonight and the whole month. I hope you've been enjoying the content so far. We have a fantastic speaker and some really great content. But Startup San Diego, which is putting on Startup Month, is really just this platform to bring the community together. And so if you want to go to the next slide, Katy, for me real quick, I want to talk about what that platform means. So we convene all the organizations in town that help startups get off the ground, validate, and grow. And so what you're seeing throughout this month is a lot of organizations, probably behind the scenes, come together to make sure that we're delivering great content to help people decide if they want to start something or join another startup as well. And I say there's this great team behind the scenes, and the next slide shows you how big of a group of people come together financially to help us put this on. So thank you very much to our sponsors. Thank you for not just the check, but the resources, the connections, and the trust year after year in saying this is important that we invest and help people enrich themselves and grow and learn. And that's what it's all about this month. This is about not just growing for ourselves, but growing for the sake of our companies and growing for the whole community. If we all are rowing at the same speed, rowing faster, we all stand to get better. So thanks for being a part of that, and thanks for diving in. What we're going to do is we're going to hand it over to Katy to give her talk. You can ask questions throughout the entire time in the chat. We also will leave time around the 45-minute mark to do a group selfie. So make sure you get your cameras ready for that. We'll all take a group picture together. And if time is available, we will do a cocktail party where you have to click check-in and then join in and meet one-on-one with other people that we will randomly assign to you. So you'll meet other people interested in sales and in startups. So if you got any questions, feel free to jump in the chat. And without further ado, I hand it over to Katy Sperry.
All right. Hi, everybody. And thanks, Neil, for the introduction. It's so great to be here with you all. As Neil said, my name is Katy Sperry, and I am the founder of Social Startup Consulting. I'll start out by giving you just kind of a quick overview of who I am so you know who's going to be teaching this session. So I grew up in Utah, went to school at BYU, got my master's here in San Diego at UCSD, go Tritons. Prior to going to grad school, I worked in the tech sphere and became really, really interested in the kind of connection between social impact and tech. So I did brand strategy for Amazon. I was on the early UberEATS launch team and had the chance to build that sales team from the ground up, which was really exciting. I'll talk about that more today. And then most recently, I helped launch a startup incubator here in San Diego called Tory Project, which many of you may have heard of. And now I'm working at Social Startup Consulting, which, as you can see from my logo, is based on my little Pomeranian Roo. So at Social Startup Consulting, we help startups, especially social enterprises, build out strong, highly performing sales teams. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll just jump right in. So my story begins with UberEATS, at least my sales story does. So I joined the UberEATS launch team back when our logo still looked like this. It was very early days. And at that time, I came into the marketing organization, but no matter what your role was, whether you were marketing, operations, whatever, you were going to spend about half your time doing business development because getting more restaurant partners was our main goal. And so every single one of us was out there hustling, forming these partnerships. I just happened to be very good at it and signed up quite a few partners. And so when the time came to actually build out a full-fledged sales team, I got chosen for that opportunity. It was really early in my career. I was really, really excited about this and wanted to do the very best that I possibly could. And so as I jumped into this opportunity, I treated it like a startup within a startup. The sales team was all about experimenting, pivoting, documenting what worked and what didn't work, and then writing a playbook to kind of discuss what worked and what didn't work. And I'll be sharing a lot of those lessons here in today's session. This story had a pretty happy ending. The team that I built went on to become 3 sales teams, and that sales org went on to become the top performing sales org in the whole US. So it was definitely some happy times and fond memories. So in today's session, we will be covering 3 main aspects of sales team building. And these are going to be the hiring, training, and managing aspects of startup sales teams. There's obviously a lot more we can dive into, and if you do have questions throughout, feel free to leave them in the chat. And then I also wanted to set the 3 goals for sales team building. So when I think about building a sales team, I'm aiming to have it be strong, which I define as exceeding sales goals, launching all the new territories on time and under budget, and team members are constantly improving. Happy, I define as high retention for top performers, a strong team culture, and a strong sense of belonging and communication on the team. Innovative, I define as constantly learning, experimenting, and improving. So documenting these improvements to preserve learning and creating a culture where it's okay to try new things, even if they fail. So that's what we'll dive into. So part 1, hiring great teams. In this section, we'll cover what kinds of people make good sales reps and some tips on how to have an interview process that will help you quickly ramp up to build a strong sales team. So I want to start off by talking about some of the hypotheses that we had that ended up being wrong. When we first started hiring sales reps, we thought that the ideal sales rep would probably be somebody who had a lot of sales experience, probably somebody who was very extroverted, and probably someone who was better at talking than listening at the end of the day. We found that some of these had some truth to them. You definitely do need to be comfortable talking to people to be good at sales, but some of them were completely wrong. As we tested it out, we found that actually entry-level sales reps tended to outperform more experienced hires. We believe that was true for UberEATS, mainly because we were doing a fairly simple sale. The deal looked about the same for every restaurant partner that we were signing on. So this wasn't a highly complex tailored sale. That may have been better for an experienced rep. But the takeaway for us was if you're building a process around a fairly simple sale, you can actually hire fairly entry-level people and they can be very successful as you train them to do sales the right way. We also found that introverts can be just as successful as extroverts as long as they are comfortable both speaking and listening, because those listening skills are extremely important. So as we looked at a lot of data from a lot of different reps who we hired and trained and brought onto the team, there were 6 qualities that came out as kind of the most important qualities for a strong sales rep to succeed. So the first was actually entrepreneurial experience. This was a little bit of a surprise to us. We didn't think that having an entrepreneurial background would have any relation whatsoever to succeeding in sales, but it turns out it really does. And we think this was probably in large part because we were working in a startup culture where things were changing quickly and you had to rapidly pivot. But entrepreneurial experience also seemed to come into play in the sense that people were comfortable pitching a new business to other people and talking about a new idea in a way that shows this is a possibility and it is a reality. Questioning and listening skills were another very important one. We found that if people are asking questions but not actually taking the time to listen afterward in a deep and meaningful way, paying attention to body language, that wasn't going to work. And so you want to test those things as you're actually interviewing to see, is this person not only saying the right things, but also picking up on the cues. Closing ability is a huge one. I think you'll see this in any sort of sale. You need somebody who's willing to ask for the close clearly and on time. Integrity is another huge one. In any startup, the fastest way to destroy your brand is to have a sales rep who does not have integrity, either toward your company or toward your customers. So having people who were willing to come on and really work with the integrity of, these are the downsides, these are the upsides, here's how we make this work for you in a very realistic way, was extremely important. Hustle was huge too. I define hustle as just hard work and being able to go out and do what you need to get the job done. And we found that hustle was generally pretty tied to people being excited about the position and seeing the opportunity that it was to come into an early startup in a sales role and have the chance to grow with the company. So if people are articulating that desire to you in interviews, that's a good sign of their hustle. And you'll also see it very much in their work ethic once they start. The last one was one that we didn't even think about as part of our sales process until we'd already been doing this for about 6 months. But we realized that some people can come across as really, really good at sales, but if they don't have the basic computer skills to do the job, they're going to struggle. So that one is less of a personality characteristic and more of a skills thing. But be sure that they can at least handle sending professional emails, putting together professional decks, those kind of things. So now we'll jump into the interview process. So I'm sure many of you have participated in something called a hiring happy hour before. This is a process that every startup does a little bit differently. And the way that we did it at Uber seemed to work really, really well. What we did first starting out before we had a dedicated sales team is we would have everyone who was a full-time employee on the UberEATS side come in and help with the interviews. In the beginning, since I was the only person dealing with sales, I was the one who personally did every single interview for hires, or at least every single final round. But I would often have other members of the team do some of the first round interviews and come back and give me feedback. So if somebody passed the first round interview, they would immediately come to a second round interview with me. And then after passing through that second round interview, if I thought they were a good fit, I would kind of put their name on a short list where at the end of the hiring happy hour, we would get together with everyone who had been helping out, whether they were an interviewer, whether they were just out there networking with candidates who were waiting for their interviews, or whether they were just there directing traffic. We would kind of compare notes on what we saw, what we observed in our conversations. I would recommend names of people who I thought could be a good fit and ask for feedback from everyone else on the team. And it was really cool to see what kind of feedback came out from people who were having casual conversations over the snacks that we provided at the happy hour. You can learn a lot about people just from those things and find really good fits. So by doing that process, we not only got the whole team buy-in for every hire that we did, we also were able to create some camaraderie between the new hires and the entire team before they even started. So that was kind of a cool thing for us. Generally, I like to hire about 5 people at a time, just so that you can have a cohort to go through training all together. And so for us, we ended up doing this hiring happy hour process about, once every month or two, just as we wanted to grow our team and bring in some new reps. And so for the first hiring happy hour, we brought in our 5 reps and trained them alone. For every happy hour after that, and for every training process after that, we actually had the reps who were on the team help with training the new hires as well. So this is all part of building a strong, happy team where there is camaraderie, there is a strong team culture. And the 2 things that we found that really, really worked for bringing our training home and helping people get up and started so they could be successful pitching restaurants within even 2 days of starting at UberEATS, where we used gamification to make the training fun and memorable. And then we did a pitch certification process. So I'll jump into those and talk through that a little bit. So I don't know how many of you have actually gone through sales training before. Some of it can be quite boring, especially if you're just watching someone else do a presentation and you aren't really familiar with the pitch or what you might be facing. And I just saw that there was a question in there, so let me get to that right after I cover this slide. So if you've ever been to a boring sales training, you probably will walk out of there not remembering a whole lot, even if you were really trying to pay attention. What we did here is we set people up on their very first day with the entire sales pitch, which ended up being around 10 pages of documents. It's generally about 5 pages for the pitch itself, and then another 5 pages of common objections that you're going to run into and how to overcome those objections. And so when people come on to their first day, we would give them that pitch and give them a chance to hear one of our best reps give the pitch. We would give them a chance to study it on their own. And then we would move into the gamified training section, which was my favorite part of the whole training program. This is based in improv. It's a skill set that is gaining a lot of popularity in the startup world. I personally love improv. I'm a huge fan. And improv is proven to spur creativity, build team trust, and make training more fun and memorable. So the way we set this up is we would actually take each of the most common objections that people had to signing up for the UberEATS product, and we would write it on a slip of paper. And this slip of paper became someone's assigned role. So let's say you were handed a slip of paper saying that your hidden concern or your hidden objection was you actually don't want more business for your restaurant because you're already over capacity and you don't even know how to deal with the customers that you had. Obviously, if a rep came in and started pitching you on how they could bring in a lot more business, you would not be very interested in that pitch. And so this is an objection that the rep would need to discover and then overcome before they can ever effectively move to the close. Some other common objections were around profitability, around level of service, around, cannibalization. So you can imagine all these different objections being written on pieces of paper and handed out to the reps who were in training. So we would all sit in a big conference room together, just like this. And one by one, a rep would volunteer to say, okay, I'm going to do a 5-minute version of the pitch, where in this version, what they need to do is discover someone's hidden objection, overcome it, and then close the deal. This ended up being a really good training experience for everybody, and also a good team building experience where the reps could see somebody else kind of struggling with something that they might be struggling with themselves. And the most important part of it is whether you're able to overcome the objection and close the deal or not in this role play, you're going to be getting feedback from the whole team that's both positive and constructive. So in terms of giving feedback, there are basically 5 steps that you want to do when you're giving feedback on these improvs. So you're going to ask first, what went well? Be sure that every single person in the room has the chance to give positive feedback and build each other up and say, hey, you did a great job at opening the conversation, or you did a great job at clearly asking for the close. There's going to be something good in even the worst pitch, so be sure to call that out and start on a good note. The second step is you want to ask the rep who was doing the pitch what they think the hidden concern was for the customer they were pitching to. Then you'll ask the customer if they got it right. You'll often see that the rep does guess it right, but it's really instructive when the rep actually gets it wrong and the customer can say, actually, my hidden concern was this other thing. And then that opens up a great conversation about how could you have dived deeper? How could you have found out what this was through better questioning or through reading body language or you name it. Third, we dive into what advice would you give this rep to improve in the future? And when I do this, I again open it up to the entire group, but I give the clear instruction to keep this constructive. This isn't an opportunity to make anyone feel ashamed or humiliated. This is just an opportunity to improve as a team. And so we'll give each other ideas and suggestions for how to overcome that specific objective in the future, or how to improve closing skills or whatever it was that came out in the role play. Step 4 is after all that feedback to improve is over, you want to end with something that is constructive again. So always end on a good note. And then step 5 is you want to have the entire team clap for the rep who was brave enough to go first. So this ends again on a good note, builds camaraderie. So people have learned a lot and they've grown and improved as a team as a result of seeing this practice. And then you'll move on to the next person to do the same thing again. Ideally, we will keep repeating this exercise until every common objection has been addressed and until every person in the room has had the chance to go at least once. So I'm going to jump into this question from Malta. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So it says, what was the actual benefit of having the new hires meet each other? Can you give an example? We are currently hiring a complete new remote team. Any advice how to connect them? So yeah, this is a great question for how to do a remote team. I will be honest, I have not built a remote team yet, so I might not be the best person to ask that remote question to. But the benefit of having the new hires meet each other is that when you're going through a sales training, it's really, really hard to get your feet on the ground and get started. And having a friend who's going through the same thing as you helps a lot, not only from an emotional perspective, but also from a learning perspective, because one person is going to maybe talk to somebody else on the team and learn something that you didn't know, or they're going to pick up on something in the training that you might not have picked up on. And so when you have this group of new hires that are all starting together, ideally they can all be in a group chat together and they can be helping each other out and asking a lot of those beginner questions to each other before it needs to escalate up to everybody else on the team. So this not only saves time for the entire team, but it also builds kind of a feeling of we're in this together, we're working together, and we're willing to help one another out, which is really important. I have been in sales environments before where people are more competitive against each other and they're not helping each other out, and there was a lot higher turnover in those environments. And so this is one where when people come onto the team, they want to really feel close, not only to the new hires, but also to everybody else. So that to me is the main advantage and benefit of having the new hires meet each other. Feel free to follow up if you have any follow-up questions. Oh, great. Glad I pronounced it right too. So now we're going to move on to the second part of the training process. And this is something called pitch certification. So it is what it sounds like. Basically, before we're ever going to assign a list of real leads to these sales reps, they will need to pass off a more difficult version of the pitch with the sales manager. So the way that I would prep reps for this is I would say, okay, before you guys get your leads, you are going to need to go through this experience where you're going to pitch me. I'm going to act as a customer. It will be a full pitch. It might take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. I'm going to have some hidden objections. You're going to need to discover everything that I need to overcome in order to say yes. And then you're going to need to clearly ask for the close and move to close the deal. Because different sales organizations define closing the deal in different ways, for us, closing the deal meant you walk out of the room with a signed contract. So in order to help people prepare for this, what I would do is they already have this written copy of the pitch that they can go through in detail. They can read through it. They can practice with the language that's already approved, but they don't need to memorize it. The best salespeople will use their own words because if it sounds scripted, you've already kind of lost the deal. So they get this chance to practice as much as they need. And then ideally on their second day of work, or if not the second, then the third, they will be scheduling time in my calendar as the head of sales to come and do this pitch. And this is something that's a little bit nerve-wracking for new reps. It takes some courage to say like, okay, I'm ready to actually step into the room and do this pitch where there's a lot riding on it. They're not going to get fired if they don't do it right on the first time, but they will get sent back to keep trying until they can get it to the point that they're ready to go in front of a customer. So we try to tell people, hey, practice by yourself, practice with other people on the team, practice until you're ready. And once they are, they go through this pitch certification process. They close the deal and they come out with a lot of confidence, feeling like, wow, okay, I just passed one of the most difficult pitches I'm probably going to face in my career. I feel ready to actually go in front of a customer and probably have an easier experience with them. So it's also kind of a rite of passage. It's a good motivator because a lot of salespeople are competitive by nature. So a lot of people want to be the first person to pass pitch certification, and it's kind of a badge of honor that they did it first. So by motivating them and saying, hey, like prepare and be sure you're ready, it's a good way to get people really diving into that sales material and internalizing it within their first couple of days. So moving on to the next section, I think it may have just frozen actually. That's not good. Okay, cool. So moving on to the next section, now we're going to be chatting about managing a sales team. So when you're managing a sales team, there are 4 things that I consider to be very important to building out that strong, happy, and innovative sales team. The first is you want to establish some really clear KPIs. These are key performance indicators. Some people also call them OKRs. So that every single rep will know what is expected of them performance-wise. They'll know how to measure their performance and where to see their performance measured, usually in your CRM system. And they will know that they're going to be held accountable for their performance. The thing that I really love about managing sales teams is I think it's one of the easiest roles to see whether you're on track or not. It's a lot easier than some other kinds of functions to see like, hey, am I tracking toward goal or not on a day-to-day basis? So helping people understand that is really setting them up for success in your company. The second thing is daily stand-ups, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Weekly one-on-ones, I'll talk about that more later, and celebrating wins. So let's jump in. I think my computer is running a little bit slow, so hopefully you guys are still able to see it. Let's see. Are you guys able to see me? Okay, so I'll start out by jumping into weekly one-on-ones. So for weekly one-on-ones, you want to, let me actually start with daily sales stand-ups. So for daily sales stand-ups, you're going to want to start by, sorry guys, technical issues here. For daily sales stand-ups, you're going to want to start out by giving people some clear KPIs and letting them track to their own goals. So as you're going around, this is a daily stand-up that should last about 15 minutes. It'll be pretty quick, but it gives a chance for everybody in the room to talk about their team's performance, if you have sub-teams, and to talk about their individual performance. So this is just a really quick exercise where you can really quickly say on an individual basis, am I on track or not? People don't like to say I'm not on track, and so it's a good motivator to stay on track just so you can say that in the daily stand-up. It gives a chance for personal accountability, and if somebody is, way overachieving goals, you can ask them, what are you doing that's working so well, and give them some shout out and some props and really celebrate that. And if somebody's consistently underperforming, you also have a chance to dive deeper and say, hey, what's going on? Like, are you being accountable for what you're responsible for? Is there anything we can do to help? So this is just kind of a quick accountability session. The other things that you can do in your daily sales stand-ups are your weekly or daily announcements. Things are often changing very quickly in a startup environment, so this is a chance to get everyone in the same room. And then you'll also do any trainings and team building exercises that you might want to do for that week. I generally like to do trainings and team building exercises about twice a week. So this would be an extra anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the stand-up, where you're going to be, again, using some improv skills to role play different situations. You can let people test out new ways of pitching that seem to be working for people who are doing well. And it's just a good chance to make sure that everybody is continually improving and that they're also reconnecting with their team and learning from one another. So moving on to the next step, which is weekly one-on-ones. For weekly one-on-ones, it's all about just doing a check-in with your individual reps. And these weekly one-on-ones, I think they're very important. It's just kind of a backbone of management that you should be meeting regularly with every single person who you directly manage. These are especially crucial in the first 4 weeks that somebody's on the team because you want them to get trained and ramped up as quickly as possible. And so part of that is building a strong relationship with them as a person, helping them see that they're more than just a number to you, that you know them well enough to know what they are individually good at and give them some opportunities that are tailored to their skill sets. You want to do these weekly one-on-ones. And the things that you want to discuss here are first performance. I really like to have sales reps discuss their own performance proactively with me because, like I said before, in sales, it's very easy to know if you're on track or not. And so generally, you don't have to come in as the manager and say, hey, you're not performing. That feels a little bit intimidating. It's usually better if you let the rep say, hey, I'm not performing, and here is what I think is going on. Here's what I'm doing to try to change it. it makes the conversation a lot more positive. If the rep isn't recognizing that there's a need for improvement or that something needs to change, of course, you should jump in and have that conversation. And what I've found is that if somebody's really struggling, it generally falls into one of 5 categories. So the first is pitch skills. Maybe they just haven't really mastered the script. They haven't really mastered how to open the conversation or how to transition. The second is organizational skills. Sales can be quite complex from an organizational perspective, especially for people doing it for the first time. They need to know how to use CRMs. They need to know, when should I be calling versus when should I be focused on email or other types of follow-up. So even knowing how to sort your leads in a way that makes a lot of sense can make a big difference in whether someone's successful or not. So organizational skills is number 2. The third is work ethic. Some people are just not putting in the hours that they need, or they're not using time wisely. So chatting through kind of better ways to structure work ethic and actually hit numbers at the end of the day, being outcomes focused can really help with this. That's a good way to coach for work ethic. The fourth is tech skills. This is one that hopefully you won't run into too much if it's something that you've already tested in the interview process. But if somebody is really having technical issues, you might need to go into a training on just kind of some basic things like how to use the CRM, how to use email, that kind of thing. The fifth is asking for the close. So a lot of reps will really knock it out of the ballpark in every other way, and they will have great conversations, be good at, everything from prospecting to, selling value. But they kind of chicken out when it comes to actually directly asking for somebody's business or to sign the contract. That's something that can be very easily coached as well. And so as you narrow in on what exactly is going on, you can spend the rest of the one-on-one really helping build those skills and setting specific goals that will help people improve from week to week. On the other side, if somebody's doing really, really well, be sure to congratulate them and ask about their goals and what kind of plans they want to make happen during their time on your team. The people who are knocking it out of the ballpark are such a huge asset, and they generally are very excited to jump in areas that are outside of directly selling. I found that reps on my team get really excited about opportunities like helping to interview new reps at hiring happy hours. They love to share ideas about how to improve the sales team as a whole. And often these ideas are so good and ones that I would not have thought of myself. So as you show that you're actually willing to implement some of their good ideas and let them drive those initiatives and get the credit for it that they deserve, that's a great way to improve your team and to keep your top performers really happy. I also like to let top performers lead sales trainings where they can teach reps new skills or go over ones that are already working. It's just a good chance for them to develop as leaders and kind of progress to the point where they can lead their own sales teams one day. I am all about public recognition of success. It's something that costs you nothing, but it really means a lot to the people who are working for you. The worst thing a manager can do is take credit for somebody else's idea. The best thing that a manager can do is support somebody in getting all the credit that they deserve for the good work that they're doing. And this is especially true in sales. So calling people out for every good thing that they're doing is huge. And then the other thing that high-performing reps really like to do is serve as mentors for new and upcoming reps. So all of those things are on the checklist. And in my opinion, every sales manager should be constantly thinking about, okay, how do I make sure that my top-performing reps are getting prepared for their promotion? And hopefully, if you're in a startup environment, there are promotions to come. Generally, there are in startups. So that was all about weekly one-on-ones. I'm seeing that Terry asked a question here. He said, what kinds of team building exercises have you found to be useful in our new virtual reality? That's a great question. So when you're managing virtual teams, this is something that it can be really hard to build actual connections with people in virtual teams. I think that certain exercises, like the one of the role play, could actually be a good team building exercise virtually because you can have 2 people who are chatting and the whole group can be listening and giving feedback. The other things that I think are important are just celebrating people's successes, and that's actually what I'm going to get into on the next slide. So the final thing that I'll kind of talk about from a management perspective of a sales team is celebrating wins. So I try to do this on a daily, a weekly, and a monthly basis. What this means is that on a daily basis, you're giving people shout outs for the good work that they're doing in the daily stand-ups. You are giving people individual recognition for any time that they reach a personal best. So, for example, let's say that one of the best performers on your team, their personal best so far has been selling 12 restaurants in a week. That's huge. If they achieve 13, you should have a huge celebration for them, both in the daily stand-up, your weekly review, and a monthly dinner of champions. This is something that I really like to do, and it does work a lot better in person than virtually. But for anyone who achieved a personal best, we would invite them out to a dinner of champions where they can dine with the head of the sales team and anybody else who qualified for a personal best that time. And it's usually a smaller, kind of more intimate group. This picture here is one that was the only time that we ever went out as the entire sales team all together. It was when we won a company-wide sales competition, so we took the entire team out to celebrate, and that was super fun. But generally, I will invite anywhere from 3 to 5 reps, and the nice thing about having it be based on personal bests is that a new rep can qualify for a dinner of champions when they're early on, get a taste for it, and then continue to try to push for their personal best. So it's not always going to be the top performing rep on your team. You'll get a good mix of new and experienced in these kind of recognitions for personal best. The budget that I usually set for these is about $50 a person. So if you're doing this in a virtual environment, I think it is a little bit harder, but not impossible to come up with some sort of team building activity where people are getting something of value. Hopefully it's something really fun where you can get together, maybe everybody orders delivery to their house and talks about what their favorite food is and just kind of relaxes on a Zoom chat. I know it's not as fun as being in a restaurant, but this could work in a virtual way as well. So yeah, as you're kind of just thinking about how to celebrate wins as often as possible, I've found that this is one of the main things that you can do to make your job really fun as a sales team manager, and also to keep your top performers super pumped to help everybody else kind of have a great time. So as Neil just pointed out, we only have 5 minutes left, so please do ask questions if you have them. This is everything that I prepared, but I'm happy to dive deeper into any questions. And if you guys would like any help with actually building out a strong, happy, innovative sales team of your own, please feel free to reach out to me at socialstartupconsulting.com, and I would love to help you out. So yeah, anybody who's got questions, feel free to ask them now. Okay, I just saw another question from Terry. So Terry, you asked, how do you know when to give up on a sales rep? This is a really, really good question. For me, I would generally make that decision fairly quickly. You'll be able to tell within the first 4 to 6 weeks if someone is going to make it on your team or not. And so if after 4 to 6 weeks, you find that somebody's performance is consistently underperforming, they're not meeting their goals that you're setting for improving, and they're not really doing what it needs, to improve and be better, then you do need to have a really direct conversation and say, hey, you've been here, let's say for 4 weeks, things are not on track. We need to create a performance improvement plan where either, you improve and meet these goals, and then we would love to have you stay on the team, or if not, you're going to need to roll off. And I generally make these performance improvement programs pretty short. They can be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, but yeah, unfortunately in sales, you will have some turnover. And there will be some people who are just not a good fit. They come across great in the interview, but they're not a good fit for the team. And so if that does happen, I think the kindest thing you can do is to be really honest with them and just say, hey, it doesn't seem to be working out. A couple of times I have run into this where somebody wasn't a good fit for sales, but they may have been a good fit for another part of the team. So as often as possible, I try to make it an event where if somebody is rolling off the team, that they can ideally roll into another role, maybe somewhere on the account management team or somewhere else in the organization. So yeah, I think the most important thing is be humane, be kind, even to people who are struggling and not performing. And that's how you kind of earn long-term team trust that, even for the worst performers, you're still going to be somebody who's there to help them. Okay, Dominic just asked a question as well. She asked, what major impact has COVID or remote work had on your sales team? So I'm not currently still managing the UberEATS sales team. This was a couple of years ago that I did that, but COVID and remote work are having major, major impacts on sales teams across the country right now. I've had a few clients reach out to me with these kinds of questions, and I think every single person is struggling with it. The hardest part for most people is just the management side of not being able to build the same level of relationships and trust that they used to have before COVID kind of separated people and took them out of the office. But you still can absolutely go forward. With COVID as well, it's kind of opening up new opportunities where some people are looking for products now that they were never looking for before. I think people being stuck in their house is opening up a lot of opportunities, especially in the consumer sector, in real estate, and then people, buying air conditioning and buying solar and buying things for their homes. So look for the opportunities that it presents, not only the ones that it takes away. And hopefully there will be something good that your team can pivot into. So good question, Dominic.
Well, thanks, Katy. Let's give a big round of applause for Katy. Thanks so much for breaking down some pretty big stigmas around sales. I took that from Jonah, who's in the audience. Thanks, Jonah. Down at the bottom, there's these 3 emojis. Mash one of those to show your support. We really appreciate that. And last but not least, if you would like to engage with a few 3-minute round networking event, what we'll do is we'll kick that off now. What you need to do is hit check in. So the button, a little pop-up will come up, and you can meet other, sales leaders here in the community or other entrepreneurs that are here watching this chat as well too. So Katy, thanks again so much. And I hope the attendees will also get a chance to chat with you during this networking event right now too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Neil.